box.
But not far out the box.
There's a huge box. I remember when I got to Lucasville and I was in maximum security penitentiary and I was talking to one of the COs, and he says, "What's it like to be brainwashed?" And I said, "Far more confining than this place." And I meant it. When you can't think outside that box, that's captivity.
Can you recall the first moment you began to have doubt about Jeff and his, the validity of his beliefs?
We ended up migrating back to Missouri where we could find some place for shelter, and that eventually exposed us to all our family who were back in Missouri. I'm standing next to this car, and my dad and my brother are both hammering questions at me. And it was as though I was inside of a metal drum. My ears could actually hear this tinniness. I could barely hear their voices. And there was a real tinniness that was going on. And this was a physiological effect to the first tauntings of doubt. There are people in the world today that are very captive, but they're out inside the fence. And we hear it talked in sermons all the time about being free. But the fact is when you're in a setting like that, you are more captive than anyone in one of these prison cells. And yet, when you break free of that mentality, then you can actually be freer than anybody that's out on the street. I found freedom in prison because I found how constrained I'd been my whole life in this belief system and where it ultimately led, especially when it was the reins were taken over by a madman like him. After I left the group, which to me was an act of unpardonable sin. It wasn't because I determined he was wrong. It took time for me to determine that. But I just couldn't go any farther. God had become so ugly, in my view. When my conscience began to awake, I began to see Dennis Avery.